Awesome to see some of you in person today. We also have a large number of people online, and we appreciate the local government's trust in allowing us to use their facility. There's a lot to get through today. We also have a survey out that hopefully you saw that we'll send again after this meeting to get your input on topics, because it has been a very busy summer and the fall is going to be even busier. Are we good on the audio online? Okay. Well, Mayor Ramsey, I'll let you welcome everybody and we'll get underway.
Well, good afternoon and welcome. This is the Legislative Policy Committee for the Utah League of Cities and Towns. Today, this is obviously for the record because we are recording this and we just keep track of some of these things. I think we're recording. I'm not sure, actually. Doesn't matter. We've got a lot of people who are joining us electronically, and welcome to all of you and welcome to those of you who are here with us. Today is August 16th, 2021, and my name is Dawn Ramsey, and I'm the chair of the LPC, and I'm just really grateful for the chance to welcome those of you who are here in person. It's great to see you. This is the first time in over a year that I've had the chance to see many of you in person. Some of you we saw in April, but we've not had an LPC meeting that I've had the privilege of conducting that's been in person in any way, shape, or form. So it's really great to see some of you, and those joining us electronically, we welcome all of you as well. Thank you for being here. Okay, the first item we're going to go over on our agenda, we have some staffing updates and events. We've got some exciting things happening, and as we continue to grow, the league progresses and people come and people go, and we've got great people who are lending their efforts to the league. So Cam, I'm going to turn this over to you and let you update them on the staffing updates.
Perfect. Thank you, Mayor Ramsey, and thank you again to those in the room and online. Logistically, for those of you who are online, we have 102 online. We ask you to use the chat box, and we have 2 staffers who are monitoring the chat box. So if you have comments, you can bring them up there and then we'll read them out to the group that is in the room. So I'm going to invite Justin Lee to come up and introduce himself. Justin, effective next week, will be the new Director of Government Relations here at the League of Cities and Towns. And I'm thrilled and excited to have Justin join our team. So Justin, I'll give you a moment to introduce yourself.
All right, thank you, Cam. Justin Lee, I said this earlier today, but I almost said Justin Lee, Director of Elections, Lieutenant Governor's Office, but that's not true anymore. But I have been with Lieutenant Governor's Office for the past 11 years, 4 of those as Director of Elections, 5 before that as Deputy Director of Elections. So I said this morning, so sorry if anyone already heard this half of a joke, but having been in the office for 11 years, I may have fought with some of you over the years and gone the rounds on certain things. So one, I apologize for that. And 2, know that now I work for you. So I'll be fighting on your behalf on issues in the future. So I very much look forward to working with you and thank the league for bringing me aboard.
Thank you, Justin. We are thrilled to have you. Justin and I have worked together for all of those 11 years that he was with the Lieutenant Governor. And even though he hasn't officially started yet, we already have work for him to do today. So thank you, Justin. Our other new staffer to introduce is our new legislative research analyst, Liam Threadgill, and I'll let Liam come introduce himself briefly.
Hello, my name is Liam Threadgill. I'm the new legislative research analyst. I haven't fought with any of you guys yet, so you should like me more than Justin so far. Not that it's a competition of new people or something, but I'm originally from North Dakota. I moved here 2 years ago, and I was working at the Division of Air Quality for the state as the rules coordinator. And I'm excited to transition to something that is closer to my heart and closer to my interests in public policy, and excited to work with and work for you guys. And I will be the ARPA contact. So if you have any questions on that, you can let me know. Thanks.
Perfect. Thank you, Liam. And really thank you to you. Liam's position is because of you. Over the last few months, as communities have received American Rescue Plan Act dollars, we met with the league board, with the board of the Utah City Managers Association, leadership of the Municipal Clerks Association, to talk about how best we could provide services for all of the ARPA related needs. And at this point, the majority of cities and towns have voluntarily contributed to this ARPA assessment, which is how we've hired Liam to be the point person. And there are a lot of moving parts on ARPA above and beyond the dollars that you've received and all of the reporting requirements that will come with it. We have several state matching funds that Liam will go into in a moment. So a lot of moving pieces there. On a sad note, this will be the last week for Wayne Bradshaw, the league policy director. I'll let him, when he's presenting later in the meeting, bid you farewell at that point, if that works, Wayne. Okay, do I advance? Not that I need it. All right, Wayne, you can come. There we go. Okay. Okay. Now I'm showing my age. I'm usually the guy who figures things out. Okay, here are the three main things we need to accomplish today. Number one, we'll talk about the relationships with legislators, that now that summer's coming to an end, unfortunately, we need you to do your outreach. Number two, we'll talk about the policy priorities survey, which encompasses many different policies that impact cities and towns. And then number three, we've had some policy subgroups that have been meeting this summer. We're starting a couple of others. And so we'll give you quick updates on those and seek volunteers for others. In terms of, we already mentioned the staffing updates, wanted just to remind you of upcoming town halls. We took July off from town halls so that you didn't have to worry about it while you were on vacation. But starting tomorrow, we'll be renewing our virtual town halls. Tomorrow's town hall is on HTRZs. Then we'll have an ARPA town hall next week. We're waiting any minute today about the release of the state grant portal for the matching grant. It will be this week for sure. We're hoping it'll be today. And then our Love, Listen, Lead task force on community trust and public safety will be hosting 3 town halls later this month on a variety of topics. And then, of course, we have the convention coming up next month that we urge you to register for and to join us at that event. So that, Mayor Ramsey, I'm going to turn it back over to Liam to give a quick update on ARPA, and then we'll go to Justin for CitiesWork.
All right, so you guys probably want to know what your money is doing for you. Well, thank you for a job, first of all. But beyond that, we've been doing some reach out and we've been doing some blast emails to everybody. Hopefully you've been able to see those, talking about deadlines for ARPA and requesting those funds. So we've done that. We've had some previous town halls also that are still available for you to find on the website and find on YouTube if you want to go look at those. They're really helpful and they help explain some of what you can use the funds for. And we've also been answering a lot of direct questions already so far. So that's been really great. We're really grateful that you guys are reaching out early so that we can figure out a plan on how to spend those funds and the proper ways to spend those funds. Like was mentioned, we have the August 20th deadline coming up. That's the final deadline to request your funds. So if you know if your city or town has not requested those funds yet, that is the final deadline. And after that, GOPB is going to redistribute those funds among the other cities for the cities that have not applied and for the few cities that have declined their funding. So coming up, we also have the GOPB $50 million local match grant that Cam was talking about. That should be released sometime today for the application portal. That's from August 16th to September 15th, as it notes on the screen. And you can also reach out to us about any questions that you have on that. We can help you with that. Cam will be on the committee, so you will not want to reach out to Cam because he will be on there, but reach out to me and I can help you with any questions that you might have on that as well. And that town hall is next week on Tuesday on the 25th. And then Go Utah also has a $35 million grant that is about rezoning from commercial to residential and mixed residential. And those rules are being drafted right now. So we are waiting to see exactly what will come from that, but those are about to be underway. And then just lastly, for any assistance, if you have any questions, if you still need to apply by Friday this week, you can let me know, spending, reporting, and then the local match grant. If you have any questions on anything ARPA related, you can reach out to me either at my email there or at my cell phone number. So just let me know and I'm happy to help. Thanks.
Am I controlling this or are you controlling it? I'm controlling it? Okay, perfect. That's even easier. All right, so we're talking about CitiesWork. So see, there's hashtag CitiesWork, and this is a resource guide and some tools that you can use to reach out to legislators, which I'm sure you all know is the easiest job, getting a hold of legislators and getting them to listen to you. Having done that for several years, it's not always the easiest thing. But so what is CitiesWork and what's this hashtag and what we're talking about? It's a call to action that encourages the members to reach out to the legislators, to tell your stories to the legislators, and to develop the relationship so that when an issue comes up, you have those relationships built and it's not the first time that they're hearing from you about something that may happen or some legislation that may have unintended consequences for your city. So we're talking about 3 easy steps that you can take. 1, identify who your legislators are. I won't ask for a raise of hands, but if you don't know which legislators cover your city, you can check that out. 2, connect with those legislators, and then 3, tell your story. So I got a little ahead of myself here, but 1, find out who your legislators are that cover your municipality if you don't know who they are yet. And I know that that's different for different cities. Some cities and towns have several legislators in their city. Some of you have one legislator that covers 20 or 30 cities across 7 different counties. So 1, identify who those legislators are, and then find out about them. How long have they served? What's their background? Have they ever served in local government? So you can know whether you need to do local government 101 with them or whether they're going to have some background there. And I'm sure many of you know we have fewer and fewer legislators who have any kind of background in local government. So 2, once you identify them, reach out and connect with them. Lots of different ways you can reach out to legislators. You need to know, and I'm sure you all do, the legislative session is a very, very busy time. During those 45 days, it's going to be harder and harder to get a hold of them. During the interim time period, you're going to have more luck trying to get a hold of your legislators and building those relationships. So you can invite them to something, bring them to a meeting, schedule a breakfast or a lunch, meet with constituents, or take them on a tour. Obviously not the cities, but the lieutenant governor has been going around trying to meet with all of the county clerks to try to understand elections better. Anytime you have a hook, if you have a tour, if you have something going on, that's a good time to get them there. That's something that I can tell you gives them a social media opportunity, which they like as elected officials. I'm sure you understand that. But have an issue, have something they can come and talk about. And 3, when you get them there, that's part of the battle. And then you're thinking, okay, I've got them there. Now what? Tell your story. Now it's time to tell them the issues that you want to talk about. Because if you're not telling them a story, someone else is. I'm sure you know, and you've been on the Hill and you hear that a lot of legislation comes from a really simple anecdotal story. I was talking to my neighbor and they said this, and now we're going to run legislation to change the whole state. You've all heard that story before. So make sure that they're hearing your stories as well, so they have other anecdotes. I was in my city and they told me da, 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 and now I understand why this or that or the other. So when you're telling your story, know who your audience is, craft a simple takeaway message, define the challenges that you have, ask them for feedback. It should never be just, here's what I want you to do, thank you for coming, out the door. You need to have that back and forth and that dialogue. Get feedback from them as well. And then you'll understand the perspective that they're bringing to whatever the issue is. And then at the very end, articulate your intended outcomes. And then I would throw at the end of this, repeat. This isn't something you do one time and then you're done and you're good to go and your legislature understands where you're coming from. This is something you'll have to repeat over and over. And particularly with redistricting coming up, you're going to have some new legislators you're going to have to reach out to. So start this process and keep this project going. So as a league, and you know, part of my position and our team is to help you with this. If you need help making connections, if you need help coming up with ideas of something to invite a legislator to, please reach out to us. I should have given you this before, but I don't have a slide with it. But my phone number, my cell number is 801-928-6948. Feel free to reach out anytime starting next week. I'm going on vacation this week, so my daughter who's going with me asks that you don't call me this week. But feel free to reach out anytime, and we're more than happy to help you make these connections and help the legislature understand how cities work. So thank you. And I guess any questions, if you have any, happy to take those. But if not, we can always talk later. Okay, very good. Thank you.
Thank you, Justin. And like I said, we're excited to have you as part of the team. And now that we're staffing back up, it'll make it easier for us to help make these connections. I've attended many legislative meetings with cities all over the state and look forward to renewing those meetings here in the months to come. Okay, here's the objective for the next. There used to be a clock right there. Oh, that's unfortunate for all of you that I can't see what time it is. So Gil, I'm looking at you. You give me the sign when I've talked too long. Oh yeah, exactly. Yep, you're welcome. You're welcome. Here's the objective for the next indeterminate amount of time. We want to bring you up to speed on what's happening both at the Unified Economic Opportunity Commission and the Commission on Housing Affordability, and then set the stage for the survey that you've all received. The biggest takeaway from this meeting, if you remember nothing else, you need to, as a city, fill out the survey that we sent on Thursday. That short is a technical issue here at the trust for those of you who are in the room. But the good news is that's just background information for what we're going to discuss here. So my goal over the next half an hour is to answer any questions you may have about the survey or the context of the survey. So either online, you can put in the chat box and Carson or Susan will ask it for you, or in the room, just raise your hands and we'll address that. So as a reminder, since we've had a few weeks since we last met, the two big commissions that are meeting this summer are the Unified Economic Opportunity Commission and Commission on Housing Affordability. Mayor Don Ramsey is the league's official appointment on the overall commission. Then she is on the growth and incentives subgroup within the commission, along with Marlon Eldred from Lehigh City, yours truly, Andrew Gruber from WFRC. And then the UEOC has a second subgroup. They actually have 7, but they have a second subgroup that has local government representation. And we recommended Heber Mayor Killeen Potter and Gunnison Mayor Lori Ney to be on that subgroup. So if you are watching and you live off the Wasatch Front and you want to be involved with Mayor Potter and Mayor Ney, we are seeking some volunteers to be a steering committee of sorts for them as they represent you on that subgroup. Most of my comments today are going to focus more on the growth and incentives subgroup. Then we have the Commission on Housing Affordability. This is year 4 of the commission. And then we as a league have hired Lewis Young Robertson and Birmingham to help provide analysis and strategy for both of these commissions. We have also partnered with the Gardner Policy Institute to do research around the impact of short-term rentals on housing availability and affordability and other costs on housing. If it feels like it's been a busy summer, you're right, it has been, but it's about to get busier. So this just gives you a quick snapshot of what the leadership of these commissions hopes to accomplish over the next 3 months. They hope by November, at the final interim session of the 2021 calendar year, to have some concepts in principle that all stakeholders can agree to support. Okay. So for those of you keeping track at home, that's 3 months away. And that means in the next 3 months, we as a league have the opportunity to evaluate ideas for our desired outcomes, but also propose best ideas to other stakeholders and state leaders. Going back to the last time we met as an LPC a few weeks ago, we shared these framing questions with you that the league board adopted. Will the policy lever that's being considered result in decreased housing prices? Who is going to pay for the impact of growth? Are we shifting the cost of growth from one group of residents to another group of residents, future or current or vice versa? Will the ultimate outcome be smart planning and livability and quality of life? Let me see. Perfect. In orange here at the bottom, you can see the desired outcome that the league board established for us several months ago. Respect the role of cities, the location and the location and infrastructure matter and how we plan. We need to balance the needs and the quality of life of today's residents and tomorrow's residents. So that's essentially the mini prism for us as we're looking at all the different policy concepts that are out there. So the two commissions over the last few weeks have prioritized 3 buckets in each commission. Okay. In the growth and incentive subgroup within the Unified Economic Opportunity Commission, number one, Representative Mike Schultz, the co-chair, told us just 2 weeks ago now, right, Ramsey? Maybe 3 weeks ago now, that we wanted to reevaluate whether local governments should be able to incentivize retail development. Now, this is a part of a larger conversation that frankly Governor Cox campaigned on, which was revisiting the state's economic development strategy and incentives in general. So we are a piece of that broader conversation. And there's a separate subgroup that is specifically looking at state incentives. Should they even exist? And if so, what should they be targeting? So our piece is part of that, but specifically looking at retail development. Number two, how do we ensure holistic, quote unquote, economic planning? So from the time I started the league 15 years ago, Wilf has pounded me about land use planning. So I'm pretty comfortable with that term. Andrew's pounded me on transportation planning. I'm pretty comfortable with that term. So the new term of art is this holistic economic planning, which in a way we've already been doing. Andrew and Wilf know each other. Like, this isn't a new thing of trying to integrate housing and land use and transportation and economic development, but there's a renewed focus, particularly in the governor's office, but also within House and Senate leadership for this economic planning alignment. And then the third piece, and we immediately pushed back on this in the first meeting, was changing the 50-50 sales tax distribution formula. And as the dialogue proceeded in that meeting, we kept asking the question, what are we trying to accomplish? And just changing the 50-50 formula with all of the disruption it would bring to communities and the disproportionate disruption it would bring to communities, does that actually get the outcome that you're seeking, which is the aligned economic planning, more housing units, and the other objectives? That's going to be part of the back and forth in the weeks to come. So that's the UEOC. Then on the CHA and the land use task force side, the three general buckets, and I believe we presented these to you before, but one is a win-win on inclusionary zoning. The second overlaps with the UEOC with how housing fits into economic development strategy. And there are multiple things you could look at therein. And then third is moderate income housing plans. And this builds off of SB 34 from a few years ago. So the three general questions that we have presented to the league officers have been how to best integrate the planning pieces, what outcomes should we incentivize, and is there a path to facilitate more housing without resorting to either state preemption or state changes to the 50-50 formula, and then figure out the next steps with the moderate income housing plans at SB 34. A huge component of this, of course, is the communication engagement strategy with the public and ensuring that we're having real dialogue with residents who are frustrated by growth. So you can pull whatever policy lever you want. If we aren't having real conversations and meeting residents where they are with their frustrations with growth, those other pieces don't really matter. So how do we make sure we're having that conversation? And for those of you who are on the ballot this year, you're having those conversations at every door. And we know based on the survey data, the survey work we've done with Y2 Analytics, that there's a lot of frustration in the general public right now. And the census simply validated that we were the fastest growing state over the last decade. Now, within these categories, we have been tracking as staff all of the different policy concepts that have arisen. And no board members can share this because I brought this up at the board meeting this morning, but any guesses on how many? I'm looking at people in the room. Throw a number out there. How many policy ideas are out there? Wah, wah. Okay. 2. Mayor Burton, too many. Hey, well done. Well done. 2. Yes, that is the exact correct answer. Internally, we've been keeping a spreadsheet of all the different ideas, whether they come from the Property Rights Coalition or the league board or pick the group. And we actually got up to 117 different policy ideas. Okay. Yeah, take a deep breath. Deep breath. Okay. So instead of sending you a survey with 117 items that Mark Christensen would have filled out, and maybe a few others, we went through working with WFRC staff, and we narrowed it into these 5 general categories, and then narrowed it down to the 30 or so where we felt like there was enough momentum and opportunity. So some items in that survey are items that are really intriguing for local government. Some of the items in that survey are very concerning for local government. But what we need from the LPC and from the board is for you to help us craft the sandbox so that we know what proposals to start building to bring back to you and then take to stakeholders and to state leaders and what's acceptable and what's unacceptable. I mentioned that we have been working with Lewis Young and we've been working with WFRC. Wayne in a minute will reference some of the work we're doing with Prep 60 on the connection of water and land use, because then on top of the massive amounts of growth, throw a historic drought on top of it. And there's a lot of consternation at the Capitol of how do we help local governments plan better? And our response back has been, actually, local governments are doing a great job of planning, but here are the different areas where we can work together. That's where your feedback on the survey will come in handy. I mentioned the research, and then I mentioned the need for volunteers in the rural subgroup. The last thing I'll add is that you've already, as league members, set league policy through the resolutions process. So we went through all of the existing resolutions in these categories as we were putting together those questions that we then sent out to you. So I'm going to stop there. Oh, there's a clock right here. Oh, perfect. Still have several minutes. What questions do you have about either the context of the survey or the survey itself that you want to bring up with your colleagues now? That survey closes Thursday, and come Friday, we're getting to work trying to piece together some proposals within the sandbox. We're going to build the sandcastle on Friday, at least start it. Do I have any questions over there? Yes, we will. So Liam, can you be the mic runner? If necessary. I either overwhelmed everybody or everybody feels perfectly comfortable.
Cam. Oh, got it.
Yep.
If I may, Cam.
Yes, you may.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. Andrew Gruber with the Wasatch Front Regional Council. Mayor Ramsey, if I may. I don't so much have a question as much as a brief comment. And that is, I think that this moment we're in right now is a moment of risk and opportunity. There is an enormous appetite for making changes from a policy perspective and from a legislative perspective right now around issues of growth. And what Cam has outlined and what the league has put together is this whole range of options that we collectively have the ability to advance or to say, no, we aren't comfortable with some of those. So the opportunity to proactively and affirmatively move our ideas forward in ways that would help you in our local communities, it may be an unprecedented one. There's so much desire for input and engagement. The risk side of this, as I think Cam is alluding to, is that things could be proposed and pushed forward that are actually not helpful, that could actually hurt you at the local level. And those things go together in this way. If we don't move forward affirmatively on ideas, if we don't engage and say, here are ways that we can help address the housing and growth challenges we're facing, we are in a really risky situation of having things imposed on us. So I think we all know this already, but this is really a moment to lean in and proactively engage and bring ideas forward to avoid the risk of things being imposed on us that actually would not be helpful at the local level.
Yep. Amen, Andrew. In fact, I had a conversation with a state leader just a few days ago where he said, look, I don't have a proposal. You guys know the problems we're trying to solve. We want to work together. You guys bring us some proposals. And that's the opportunity and also the risk. That's why today's LPC is not about you taking a position on anything. It's about providing you enough context so you can fill out the survey and provide us with that general policy direction online.
So we have two comments from folks online. Sorry, I'm in a weird angle. So first from Mayor Baker, we need to ensure that cities with a population of less than 5,000 are held harmless in any changes to the 50-50 formula. And then the second comment was, I believe, addendum to Andrew's comment, which Isaac Paxman added that we risk losing credibility and power as a league. And then finally from, I can't see the whole name, Do I understand that the legislature is considering 100+ policy concepts, and we are to help determine the league, how the league should spend their time?
So Carson, let me just pick up her comment because I pulled it up on the chat box and I saw it. So first, for Mayor Baker, who brought up the point of sale component, recognizing that Naples is a community that would be disproportionately impacted by a change to the 50-50 formula. Mayor Baker, that's part of the research that Wayne will be presenting in a moment about the shift in point of sale based on online sales and the underlying question of if you change the 50-50 formula, does that get to the outcome that several legislators desire, which is more housing? And thus far, our research is indicating that it won't. I'll let Wayne go into more detail about that in a moment. And so then the question is, what other policy tools are there? It was Councilmember Simmons from Logan who was asking the question of providing the general guidance. There were 117 items. We have gone through and narrowed them down to about 25 to 30 that are in that survey. And I actually have the preliminary survey results here from the 26 cities that as of this morning had already submitted it. So what's helpful for us is we start looking through these results. For example, a strong majority. Hey, look at that. Perfect. So, for example, a strong majority of cities have told us thus far that facilitating better short-term rental enforcement, they're either somewhat comfortable with that approach or very comfortable with that approach. That reinforces what we already knew, but it helps build the sandbox so we can say, okay, there are multiple ways that we could do that in order to ensure that housing units don't become short-term rentals, they stay as long-term rentals, which then ideally helps ease some of the housing shortage. Another one, withholding B and C funds, which are local dollars that the state distributes according to a formula to cities that don't fulfill the intent of SB 34, which is the moderate income housing plan components. So you can see at first blush, a strong majority of our members are very concerned about that type of approach. So, council member, to your question, we took the 117, we've narrowed it down to the 30 or so that we think have the most potential momentum. We're looking for the general policy guidance from this group, and then we will start working out the specifics. So on short-term rentals, for example, there are multiple policy levers that other communities around the country have looked at, some of which are available here, some of which are preempted here. So let's identify what those are, and then we can bring that as part of this overall conversation on growth. So we're not asking you for the specifics, we're asking you for the policy concepts. Was there another question online?
There was one more comment. Bill Kobe said disparate needs of different cities. Oh,
Okay.
you just pull it up on there, yeah.
Hello, Bill. Yes. So again, that's one of our key principles, one size fits all. And so actually, Bill, that triggered a thought that it's important for you to know here, because I've had several cities who've reached out to me saying, basically, how are you going to balance everybody, right? We pay you to balance everybody, but how are you going to do it? First, once we close the survey on Thursday, we'll break down the results according to classification of city. We'll break it down by geography, and we'll be able to identify, as long as people fill it out appropriately, that communities that are similar to Taylorsville, established cities that don't have much greenfield, if any, I guess your only greenfield left are parks. And my daughter loves your parks, so I am not advocating developing your parks. But the challenges in Taylorsville are really different when it comes to growth than, say, South Jordan, which still has some greenfield, but certainly less than you did 5 years ago, which is different than, say, Eagle Mountain, which has a lot more greenfield space for development, but isn't as connected to UTA as Taylorsville is, which is still not as connected to UTA as Murray is across the river. Okay, so my point is that we work through the one size fits all concepts. It's figuring out there's not just one tool that the state can pull, which tools make sense in which different communities, and then making sure we understand that disproportionate impact. So Bill, you obviously are speaking on behalf of Riverdale, but I'm looking at Park City, and we had Moab Mayor Niehaus on the board call earlier today, and there's a huge disproportionate impact if you change the 50-50 on regional centers and on tourism destinations and resort communities. And so that's another piece that we constantly have to work into the dialogue. Yeah, Mayor Baker, yep, same thing with Naples. Okay, Matt from Heber, as long as there are no, I mean, I can just talk to the computer unless people want to raise their hands in the room. So Matt from Heber, this point is a very important one about the role of school districts. So Mayor Ramsey, as the league rep on the Unified Economic Opportunity Commission, this was the first point that she made in our incentives and subgroup meeting, was that we didn't have any school district representation in that room. And if we're talking about redevelopment, we're talking about tax increment financing, we needed to have school districts in the room. And so they, being the co-chairs, have committed to reach out to those school districts to make sure that they are part of that conversation when we're discussing property tax or other revenue streams. So Matt, thank you for triggering that thought. Other thoughts or statements about the survey or things you want to share with your colleagues? Here comes the mic for those online.
I couldn't tell from the 5 general policy categories. Is there any policy ideas out there around infrastructure development and economic incentives for growth off from the Wasatch Front?
Make sure everybody in the room heard Don's question from South Georgia. Are there incentives being discussed or infrastructure investment being discussed off the Wasatch Front? Fair question. Did I repeat it correctly? Okay. The answer is yes. So within this Unified Economic Opportunity Commission, you have 7 subgroups, and one of the subgroups is specifically focusing on investment in rural Utah, infrastructure being a huge component of it. So that is separate from the subgroup Mayor Ramsey and I are serving on, but we nominated Heber Mayor Potter and Gunnison Mayor Ney to be the 2 voices of local governments there. Now, how that subcommittee will fit together with this other subcommittee, I think, is part of the jigsaw puzzle for the next few months. But that's in part why we're seeking volunteers to make sure you're working closely with Mayors Ney and Potter to be raising those issues. It's certainly something that Mayor Ramsey and I can also be bringing up in the urban area and in the urban subgroup, because at some point you have an excessive amount of pressure on the urban areas that it just is no longer sustainable and you lose the quality of life. Yet there are areas of the state that are begging for more residents and more infrastructure and more development. So the former mayor turned Governor Cox is very, very receptive to that. We meet monthly with his senior advisors, Mayor Ramsey, Mayor Caldwell, Mayor Silvestrini, and I, and that has come up in almost every call as they're trying to strategize how to disperse some of these impacts of growth off the areas that are already feeling the pressure. So we have a great point. We'll make sure that we continue to bring that up. Councilmember Smith / Chief Smith.
You looked at, I mean, just as you mentioned a few minutes ago, that some of the cities have different levels of growth that they're experiencing and different factors as they look at that. Are you looking at how some of those cities that have very like factors in their growth or rapid growth are being affected? Much, obviously a South Jordan, a Harriman, a Bluffdale, a Saratoga, an Eagle Mountain, who are experiencing tremendous rapid growth, but have some of the other challenges of lack of infrastructure, lack of transportation options. Are you looking at maybe bringing a subgroup of those type together to look at those particular issues? Bigger picture.
Yeah, that's a great point. And just to make sure everyone in the room heard it, recognizing, or what Councilmember Smith from Harriman is pointing out, is the reality on the ground in the Southwest Valley and Northern Utah County is the infrastructure already is not keeping pace with growth. And now you throw even more growth on top of it. And again, you lose your sustainability and you lose the quality of life. And so what tools do those communities need compared to other fast growing communities? So when we break down the survey results and we see those trends, which like we're anticipating these results, but when we see these trends, then I think the question will become for Mayor Ramsey, do we need a subgroup within the subgroup to be working on those ideas? The good news is, in my conversations with key state leaders, they all recognize that without infrastructure, you just have the negative impacts of growth. And we are awash in infrastructure dollars right now. So the question then becomes between normal state dollars, federal dollars from ARPA and a federal transportation bill, and local dollars, how do we build the infrastructure that we need so that growth can be sustainable? So to answer your question about will we put together a specific subgroup, give us 3 more days. Let's see what those survey results look like, and then we can designate from there. Other questions online or in the room? Interesting. Okay. So, yeah, council member, it'd be interesting to get that specific information in Logan. But this is a perfect example of making sure we have all the information we need as we go into these conversations with state leaders. Any other comments or thoughts about the survey and the overall objective? Yep, Mayor Ramsey.
So not to add too much, too much of an emphasis on the points that have been made, but it deserves as much emphasis as it can be made. Cameron and I have our next subcommittee meeting in Andrew. We will be there the 24th. So this closes and we have just a couple of days to really try to analyze. We desperately want to do the best we can to help craft policy that is not going to be harmful to communities. We all have different communities. Cameron always says one size fits all. We really all feel that way. And it is not the overall feeling of the legislature. And there's a very strong will currently to create policy. If we don't have something better to offer, they're going to do it. And they already know what they want to do. And so please, please, please fill this out and give us the tools that we need to collect the data, analyze it, and best understand how to go back and represent what cities need with policies and ideas, because this is a fast moving train and we want to do everything we can to get it right collectively, which is easier said than done. But if we don't hear from you, I mean, it makes it a lot harder. So we're really trying hard. Please fill this out and work with us to get this information so we can go back and try to represent local government in your communities and your constituents, because they're all residents of the state of Utah, but each community has their own needs, and we need to make sure that we do all we can to make sure that local government, doesn't pay an unfair price. So thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Ramsey. Let me close with this, then I'll turn it over to Wayne on the sales tax update. In the June legislative interims, both the House Republicans and Senate Republicans received a presentation from the Property Rights Coalition and other groups in that space about the housing crisis and potential steps, next steps. We had multiple legislators who reached out to us afterward and said, we disagree with this statement or we disagree with that statement. I presented to the Senate Republican caucus the next day, and I was there to present on ARPA, took most of my questions about local zoning and the 50-50 sales tax formula. Multiple legislators said to us, you need to make sure your cities are talking to us about what they're already doing and about how they're tackling growth challenges so that we can stand up for our cities and make sure we get to good consensus policy. That's the CitiesWork challenge, making sure you're telling your story so that legislators are not just hearing one side of the story. In addition to that, simultaneously, now is the opportunity for us to say, okay, are there things we can do better? For example, are there things we can do better in CRA areas to get better outcomes? And if so, what are those things? Are there things we can do within the property tax system to make that better? If so, what are those things? And then we can start to build the policy sandcastle. Wayne, I'll give you a chance both to say farewell and also give an update on the sales tax piece. And then we'll go right into water from there.
Thanks, Cam. So I'll start off just by reassuring Justin that it's going to be okay. Before I started working at the league, Cam and I actually locked horns on the Main Street Act when I worked for former Congressman Bishop, and he was out there with the league advocating for support, and he and I locked horns, and so it all works out. Just want to say it's been a privilege working for the league. I've enjoyed working for the membership as well as working with the team at the league. I will miss them, but I'm going to work for Rio Tinto in a local government community relations position. So I'll still be around. I'll still be working with many of your communities. And hopefully I'll still engage with the league staff as well. Just wanted to give you a quick update on, in the 2020 session, Senator Bramble ran a resolution asking the league, UAC, and UTA to look at the changing in sales tax from a point of sale location at a retail location to a point of sale at a residential location. So how is e-commerce impacting our communities, and are we ready for that change? So what you see on the screen here on the left-hand side is what e-commerce looked like in every community in 2015. So in 2015, the community that had the least amount of e-commerce saw about 2% of their sales coming from e-commerce. The other 98% was coming from retail locations. What you see in red is the state, and they were about 14% in 2015. And then you go all the way down to some of our smaller communities, and they were seeing about 70% of the point of sale locations coming from e-commerce. And so that's the range that you see in 2015. Then in the middle is 2015 or 2020. So the community at the top saw 5% of the sales come from e-commerce. The state is at about 22% in 2020. And then all the way down, the city that saw the most was about 92% of the sales in their community came from an e-commerce transaction. So obviously, and then on the far right is just basically what it looks like based on city class through the years. Towns obviously are seeing a larger percentage of e-commerce coming from point of sale coming from e-commerce, and then it goes down the line. What this data is telling us is that there's potentially no need to change the 50-50 because you are seeing a natural progression with e-commerce to point of sale happening at a residential location. So you're getting that point of sale at someone's house and not at a traditional retail location. The other thing that we're asking is, in this resolution, Senator Bramble wants to know if we're prepared for this change. We did a fiscal survey in 2018 that told us that generally we have the sense that yes, we're comfortable with where sales tax at and where sales tax is going. But if you feel like that is different in your community, please reach out to me so we can make that part of our report back to Senator Bramble and the legislature. So Cam mentioned earlier that we are putting together some working groups to dive into a little deeper into legislation and how we should move forward as an organization. You can see there's existing working groups on drought response. So the H2O Collective, which is a partnership with Prep 60, so the four large conservancy districts, Loveless and Lead, that has done a lot of work before the last session and has been doing a lot as well as homelessness. Working groups that we're going to start. So we're looking for volunteers for a rural Utah working group, a fireworks working group, and a short-term rental. So there will be staffers coming up and going into a little more depth into those various working groups. I'm seeking members for the drought and water response working group. So what you see on the screen is this image sits on the governor's website. This is his proposal on how to try and address water issues in the state of Utah. Two of these areas impact local governments. So integrated land use planning, as well as secondary meters. And then what you see on the right-hand side of the screen is where we currently sit in the drought situation in the state of Utah. While July was the 12th wettest July in record, we still have extreme drought and exceptional drought throughout the state. So as a league, we think it's important that we be proactive in coming up with legislation regarding integrating land use and water use. Carson?
We have a question from Paul Larson. How will rural be defined?
How will rural be defined? That's a good question. I think there is. Cam, do you have a response to that? How will rural? Yeah, we haven't defined that yet. So with our pre-existing working group with H2O Collective, so it's 5 staffers from the conservancy districts and 5 staffers from local government. We're putting together draft legislation that would have you in your general plan integrate or connect when you're planning for land use. You're also looking at the water that you have available now and in the future with this within your general plan. So we have a draft. We're going to ask the LPC subgroup to take a look at that, provide feedback, make edits, and then we'll bring it to the LPC for a final vote. Again, the reason we think that we should be proactive on this is because it's part of the governor's initiative to deal with water, as well as we've had calls from multiple legislators saying, we're going to run this bill, or we want to be part of this legislation. So we're putting this work group together to try and have a control of that issue. So you see my emails there. If you could please email me, and we also have sign-up sheets in the back of the room, so you can email me or you can sign up. But if you'll please email me by the close of business on Thursday, so that way I can make sure and get your contact information over to Justin, who's going to be taking the lead on that. John?
Correct. Is that an impact statement, if you will, while we're doing our planning, in other words, assess proactively what the impacts will be, the impact analysis, the full analysis, or whether it be. Well,
Yeah. So John in the room was asking a question about what is that kind of require within our general plan. It's high level, but it does tell you as a community that if you're growing or if you're even stagnant, is your current land use, so your landscape ordinances, your zoning, does that take into account how much water you have available and how much you will have in 5, 10, and 15 years? So these current policies, can they sustain that 15-year growth? We recognize this is very technical. We do plan on asking for staff to be available at DNR. So this will be an appropriations request as well, to have staffing available to help you put that plan together in your general plan. Yep, one more question.
I don't think this is appropriate because I'm not a voting member, but I would like to move that they reject your letter of resignation and thereby declare you a permanent asset of ULCT. Done a great job, Wayne. Thank you.
Well, thank you, John. I will invoke the same letter for you retroactively. So. All right. Next, we're going to have fireworks, and that is going to be. Yeah. Fireworks for my departure.
I would also support Wayne not leaving. That'd be great. You'll notice he put in his resignation after I got hired, so I am taking that a little bit personally. So 2 really fast fireworks stories. One, when I was a teenager and into my early 20s, we used to travel to Lander, Wyoming every year to help set up a fireworks show that was done by my dad's cousin. and we would actually wire explosives. They let us do that as teenagers, which is a horrible idea. And then we put on a fireworks show. The second quick story is that I used to live in West Bountiful, and the fence line of my property was the northern boundary of the West Bountiful Park, a really big, nice park by the freeway there, and they did a fireworks show. But we noticed that the boundary line to our fence was 50% closer to the fireworks than the safety line where the public had to sit. So we had a lot of people come to our backyard for the very best seats for the fireworks. And then we would clean up ash the next morning from the trampoline and other places, because that was probably not safe either, but it was amazing. But the league does have a resolution on fireworks, and so other than those two things, I have no expertise on fireworks. So this is my ask for volunteers to help us as we work through some firework issues. There is a resolution. There will be an email going out about that. But if you're interested in helping out on fireworks, I'm sure it's as exciting as it sounds to work on fireworks issues. Please let us know. I personally could use the help, and we could all use the help to push firework policy forward. So watch for that email, but if we have volunteers, please let us know.
Okay, yeah. Live New York, it's Saturday night. I don't know anything about homelessness.
You're good. You don't have a slide on this. I'll do this slide after you do.
Hi, my name is John Park with the Utah League of Cities and Towns. It's really good to know that we have someone dealing with the legislature on fireworks that doesn't believe in laws and ordinances and things like that, isn't it? It's pretty cool. Justin, welcome. It's good to have you here. One of my tasks with the League of Cities and Towns is we're working with our Love Listen Lead task force. And we've got a lot of things going. You've heard of that. We've talked about it a lot. We went through a listening phase where we talked to everyone, I guess is a good way to do that, say that. Everyone from the Fraternal Order of Police to Black Lives Matters to, as we worked on our surveys, we did a huge survey. We had focus groups representing people of color, police officers, things like that. So we've done a lot of listening, and now it's time to lead. And we've done a great job of that so far. I think our priorities have been based around well, let me just kind of say it this way, is as we started in Love Listen Lead, it was in response to a lot of things that were going on nationally and locally, dealing with trust in police department. And what we've kind of grown that, and it's become somewhat of a tug of war as far as is a lot of times as we look at it. And on this hand is reform that's needed, some cases needed, and it is absolutely needed by some groups, they think. And on the other hand is our responsibility as cities and towns to provide good police services. And often when we talk about things like qualified immunity, body cams, recruitment and retention of police officers, they're counterproductive to a lot of things going on. And so it seems like as we walk through this this tug of war that a lot of issues come up. And right now, some of our priorities deal with things such as garrity, which is a police officer, well, any public official can be compelled to speak and not give up his Fifth Amendment rights. Yet right now, the State Records Committee has said those garrity records are public records. And it's something we've made a priority to work on. We're making a priority with CCJJ. They begin responsibility of the legislator to come up with a data set that we need to collect, and we're working very hard on that. We're working hard on body cams, building trust, recruitment and retention. Another legislative issue that we will be talking about, of course, is qualified immunity, that we all need to understand, and I think it goes with some of the city leads, CitiesWork, hashtag CitiesWork things that we've been talking about. We have a resolution that I'm not going to read all of this. It's pretty, I don't think you can read it because it's kind of in a smaller font, we've come up with a resolution that recognizes the contributions of police officers. And but we do acknowledge that there is a gap that exists in trust between not just with police officers and various members or various communities, whether that those communities be based on race and gender, or whether those communities be based on age. And as we work on those, it's important for us to realize that, as I mentioned, the tug of war, a lot of that is for us to be able to balance the transparency and accountability and authority, to improve opportunities to listen, and community members to enhance trust in public safety and law enforcement, and improve processes for and how when police officers use force. And this resolution resolves the following three things. And before I go through those, I just want to let you know that you might have a lot of questions on these, and I'm going through this very fast, but we're going to send out a copy of this resolution to you, and we're asking you to give us feedback before we take it back to our Love, Listen, Lead task force, who's made up of many of you, are your police chiefs, your city administrators, and also city attorneys. And so as we go that, and then you'll see it again when it comes around time of our annual. But we resolved that we oppose legislative and policy efforts that preclude the ability of police departments to respond responsibly to public safety or mental crisis. We'll oppose legislative and policy efforts that unduly restrict the personal privacy and or due process of peace officers. We will oppose legislative and policy efforts that result in unfunded mandates or unsustainable financial burdens on municipalities and communities without significant benefits. We have done a lot. We had approximately 21 bills passed in the last legislative session that dealt with public safety and police officers, but those things, and we worked very hard on those. In some cases, we crafted the language, but we feel like what has been done so far is really the low-hanging fruit, that there are a lot of very difficult issues that are out there, things like qualified immunity, things like, use of force, our ability to find out what happened in things like Garrity, to actually be able to drill down and know what's going on within our communities. And it's going to take a lot of effort, and those things are going to be very difficult for us to work through in the coming weeks and months. So we will send all of you, as I mentioned, we'll send all of you a copy of the resolution. We're asking for you to read it. We're asking you to send comments to me. There's my email address. You can pick that up on the webpage of Utah League of Cities and Towns. And we'll take your comments and we'll go through them and we'll pass them on to our Love, Listen, Lead task force. And then the resolution, we'll go through the resolution process, which includes the LPC. So you'll see that again, and we can go over it in great depth at our next meeting before we discuss it in annual. So with that, this is for you folks. Any questions? Carson, any questions on the chat room? Hey, thank you.
Perfect. Thank you, John. And thank you for all the work within the Love, Listen, Lead task force. I'm just going to give you perspective of what's happening in other states when it comes to public safety. Last week, I attended the National League of Cities event with state league directors from around the country. One of our workshops was on public safety legislation. I actually presented about Love, Listen, Lead and the balance that we've successfully struck here. It was interesting listening, though, to what's happening in other states, including the neighboring state of Colorado, where the Colorado Assembly last summer essentially ended qualified immunity for local government. They did not end it initially for the Colorado Department of Highway Patrol. They only ended qualified immunity for local government. That was one of many things within their omnibus bill. Then they came back this past session and had an even bigger cleanup bill that did eliminate qualified immunity to a degree for the Colorado Department of Highway Patrol. But listening to the tug of war and the push and pull happening just that state over, and the number of officers that those agencies are losing, and some of the negative consequences from that legislation, I think was a really eye-opening experience for us. Meanwhile, as John referenced, last year in the legislative session, we had 20 consensus bills where you had organizations as diverse as the Fraternal Order of Police and the ACLU and the NAACP and the Police Chiefs Association, others could all say we support these bills. And as I talk to my fellow state league directors in other states, that's not really happening elsewhere. As John indicated, a lot of big issues this year that we currently have different work groups working on that are reporting back to Love, Listen, and Lead. And so that's why they, as a committee, felt strongly to bring this policy resolution forward. Now, those of you who are veterans of our policy resolution process in the past may not recall us ever talking about a resolution in August, because our process is usually the week before annual, the resolution appears. Based on feedback from many of you, we in the spring modified the resolution process. So the one we're giving you notice now, and we'll be sending that draft resolution out with the LPC materials either later today or tomorrow. The task force has been working on it all summer. They'll incorporate feedback in their final meeting before the next LPC. And then we put LPC 2 weeks before annual so that you as the resolutions committee have time to chime in there, and it's not all being done in the last week of the convention. So hopefully that'll make for a better outcome. John?
I would just like to add that to some of you, some of the terms we're using may seem a little foreign, like garrity, qualified immunity, those kind of things. And I want to put a little plug in for, we're having a series of town hall meetings starting next week. But on the 30th, we're going to have a meeting almost entirely just dedicated to understanding those terms, to understanding a lot of the things we talk about when we talk about qualified immunity, when we talk about use of force. There's as many definitions as there are departments out there what use of force means, but what it means in the context of some of the things that we feel like there's going to be legislation out there that you need to understand what they mean, because if you don't understand what they mean, we cannot convey the appropriate message to our legislators. And so let's make sure that I just wanted to put a plug in for those town hall meetings, and that's one of the things that we feel is very important for our elected officials to be able to understand and converse. Thanks.
Perfect. Thank you, John. As a former city manager and former police chief, John's been terrific at helping steer and navigate the Love, Listen, Lead task force to find that balance of supporting officers and identifying areas of improvement to ensure community trust. And thank you to those of you whose cities participate in that task force. So Mayor Burton, specifically, I want to thank you for Chief Wallentyne. When we lost Bountiful Police Chief Tom Ross to Governor Cox, that was a really rough day. I'm sure it was even worse for Bountiful City, but for me personally, that was a rough day. He called me Saturday morning at 8 a.m. the week before the session saying, oh, by the way, I'm not going to be a state employee. Yeah, that was a rough day. But Chief Wallentyne has been phenomenal. And so he commits a lot of time on behalf of cities across the state through this task force. So thank you to West Jordan for sharing him. And thank you to the other cities who contribute attorneys, police chiefs, city managers, and elected officials to having that conversation. We are soliciting, we have a couple of elected officials who are stepping down from that task force. So if any of you are interested or have people in your cities who are interested in being part of that task force, please let us know. Likewise, we'll just quickly summarize the remaining subgroups that we're working on. And don't worry, we will send a follow-up email that has the draft resolution, as well as how you can either volunteer or volunteer someone from your city to participate in the different subgroups. On homelessness, nice, easy issue of homelessness. We had former Senate President Wayne Niederhauser speak to the league board this morning. He was scheduled for 40 minutes, went for over an hour. Frankly, we could have been there all day. It was really enlightening to understand where he's coming from as the newly appointed state homeless coordinator and what that is going to mean for cities and towns. We talked briefly about everything from mental health resources to the role of cities and counties to the Homeless Shelter Cities Mitigation Fund, to the disproportionate burden that cities that house homeless resource centers bear in public safety, and to the potential need for an overflow facility in Salt Lake County or elsewhere. He was not there to make any specific proposals. He was there to give us an update on what he's heard during his listening tour over the last couple of months and to solicit questions and feedback from league board members. That being said, there will be legislation on this front, so we are trying to be proactive and get in front of it. In cooperation with the Salt Lake County Council of Governments, we put together a homeless subgroup that's broader than Salt Lake County. So we have representation on there from Logan and from Layton and from Ogden and from St. George. We've reached out to Vernal. So again, that's going to be a subgroup that will have a lot on its plate in the months to come. The points we've laid out here, number 2, 3, and 4, what's the role of cities? Will the different policy options reduce homelessness, and will they mitigate the public safety impact on those cities? That's, again, the mini prism for this issue. I already mentioned the Unified Economic Opportunity Commission and the need for additional voices. Mayor Baker, I'm looking at you through the screen, but doesn't necessarily have to be you. So let's see here. Is there anything? I'm quickly scanning the chat room. Is there anything that needs to come up? Okay, then I will close the chat room. Sorry, I got distracted. I'm like, cat up here. I saw a light pop up with number 18. I had to open it. You just can't leave text unanswered. Last but not least, I'll turn it over to Carson to give an update on short-term rentals and solicit volunteers there. Are there any questions though on any of my issues, economic opportunity, housing, homelessness, all the easy ones? Wow. Okay, well, it is great to see everybody. Remember, annual convention will be at the end of September. Please register now. I'll come back up with Mayor Ramsey to close it, but Carson, give us a quick update on short-term rentals.
Thanks, everybody, and we'll see if I can keep the screen working for the rest of this presentation. So obviously short-term rentals impact on housing stock is not a new conversation, but we think that there's more appetite in the legislature this year than in previous years to be able to take a better look at short-term rentals, specifically that enforcement mechanism. So I'll start by just mentioning that ULCT has partnered with Gardner Policy Institute to try to perform an inventory of the short-term rentals in all your different jurisdictions. That detail includes whether it's a full home, whether it's a bedroom, whether it's ADU sort of thing. So we'll be able to hopefully have a pretty good idea of where the short-term rentals are and hopefully be able to provide some analysis of how that is quantitatively affecting the home stock in your communities. Obviously, that'll affect some jurisdictions more than others. I'm sure Park City and Moab have a much higher share of short-term rentals that are actually competing with full-time housing than some other larger communities. But again, we'll wait for the data to see and start working through it. But in the meantime, it really helps us to start building a backbench of data on the broader effect of short-term rentals in your community, on whether you have to have a public safety respond more frequently to short-term rentals than other homes, how it has changed neighborhoods. And I've heard from several of you already that short-term rentals really have substantially changed the experience of living in your city. But the more information you can give us, the better. And so, like Cameron said, we're putting together a work group to both examine the data together and then be able to kind of craft policy mechanisms to enhance our ability to enforce the ordinances that many of you already have. And so with that, I won't take up too much of your time, but feel free to drop me an email. My email's there at the bottom, keilers@ulct.org. Yeah, feel free to, if you have any other questions about short-term rentals or the research, to reach out to me as well.
Folks, it's an exciting time to be in policymaking. These are good problems to have. Again, when I talk to my state league directors in other states and listening to how they were devastated by the pandemic or have been devastated by the economic impacts of the last decade or 2 decades, we have a lot of challenges, but we have a tremendous amount of opportunities. So thank you in advance for your participation in subgroups, and thank you for your involvement within the league. Before Mayor Ramsey wraps it up, I neglected to mention that Wayne Bradshaw and league staff are hosting a sales tax specific meeting that was going to be at 2:30. We'll just start that meeting as soon as we wrap up with LPC, maybe 10 minutes after. So those of you online who are going to be part of that and those who are in person be part of that, we're not going to wait till 2:30. We weren't sure how long LPC would go, and clearly we're on schedule. So Mayor Ramsey, your one in-person meeting has been on schedule. So kudos. Mayor Caldwell's jealous. Okay, thanks everybody. Mayor Ramsey, I'll turn it back to you.
So there's not that much going on. Thank you. If I may, please, on behalf of all of us here and all of us online and all of us who represent local government, thank you to all of you who are working so hard to help us and to help us navigate these challenges. I made a couple of notes. I had drought, housing, the tax distribution, economic development, homelessness, public safety, incentives, infrastructure, fireworks, short-term rentals, overall growth in both urban and rural Utah. And that's just in the last few minutes, right? These are important things that impact the quality of life for the residents that we represent. Thank you to all of you for your engagement. I just want to put a reminder out there, please take the survey. It was sent Thursday, it closes Thursday, right? This Thursday, I believe, the survey closes. Also, if you'll look over the resolution, John, did you say that has been sent or it's being sent? That's what I thought. Okay, the resolution is going to be sent. Please read that and respond to John at johnwpark.com by August 25th. And let's see, a plug for our annual convention, September 29th through October 1st, downtown Salt Lake City. It really is going to be a very good convention. It's going to be a great convention, but there's also a lot of really important work to be done. And if your city wants a chance to have your voice be heard and to have your vote be cast on behalf of a lot of these policy decisions, we ask you to please be there. And if I may, we're also having, just a little aside, we are having a women in local government get together during the conference as well. So I'd like to invite any of you who would like to participate in that. Okay, I'm going to issue a personal challenge that the staff at the league have not heard of, but I'm going to make a request that before our October 18th LPC meeting, every one of you do something to reach out to your legislators. Text them, call them, invite them to lunch, have a meeting, host an event, host a meeting, invite them to a ribbon cutting, invite them to City Hall, have them come to council meeting and share what they're working on, anything. But please, please make a deliberate effort to contact your legislators. We all, maybe not all of us, but well, we all do. We have at least one representative and at least one senator. Many of us have many. Some of us have one of each. Regardless of how many you have, please make an effort to make that connection, because that connection that we have with them is going to be absolutely critical. We need those relationships, and we need an open line of communication where we know that they'll take your call or they'll take your text, and you'll be able to help express the needs that your city has. Anyway, with that, I appreciate it, and I am going to ask for a motion to adjourn. Thank you. I have a motion. Can we get a second? Thank you. All in favor, please say aye. Thank you, all of you, and thank you to those of us joining online. We appreciate you being here, and we'll see you soon. Thanks.